Hi everyone, today we're going to look at our next making money from your garden video, and this one's about making plant pots, cement plant pots. I find it fun. I enjoy making cement plant pots. If you're into ceramics, you can make ceramic ones. You do have to have a few things, and I'll go over that as we go along. The tools you'll need, the things you'll need to have to make your pots, and I'll show you a couple of pictures now of some of the pots that I've made over the last couple of weeks. I sell these pots at markets because they're cement and they're larger pots. They're a bit too heavy, bulky and annoying to post, so they're just a bit of, it's just a bit of extra pocket money that I can earn from markets. Okay, so let's get going and I'll show you what we need to start with. Right, what you'll need to start with is some tools, something to mix up your cement with. I really like these plastic trowels. You'll need some tools for smoothing your cement, for smoothing the pots, and that's I use these couple of cement tools, a knife with a pointy end. I really find this tool handy. It's for tiling, I think. And you'll also need some basic moulds for your sand. You can use plant pots, plastic buckets. One of my favourites is this size square plant pot. I'll have to say to start with that I don't use commercial moulds when I'm making my plant pots. It means that they're more rustic looking. You can get a lot of commercial moulds, and I can get them for you if you like, but they're all very small, suitable for small succulents and gifts, but not very practical. I prefer to make my pots a bit bigger and, well, as I say, a bit more rustic looking. But if you want to make your own moulds at home, very plain moulds, you can get these little buckets and small containers like this to to fill with cement and make your pots with. But today I won't do that. I'll make one the way that I usually do. So apart from your basic tools, and some paintbrushes, apart from your basic tools, you will need sand. Your sand shouldn't be too coarse. You need it so that when it's damp, you press it in your hand and it sticks together. Coarse river sand generally won't stick together, but this sort of medium sand that I get does. Now, you'll also need gravel. I use this fairly fine gravel. If you use gravel that's too coarse, then it'll make your cement coarse and you won't get a smooth finish on your pots. You'll also need cement, of course. I must go and fill that up before we start. Right, you'll need a pot of water, and if you like, I don't tend to because I paint everything. If you like, you can go to Bunnings or Mitre 10 and buy cement colouring. Wait a sec, I'll just show you a pot. This is a pot that I have used this cement colouring on. It still needs to be painted, but the basic background is this red. Doesn't have to be fully painted if you don't want to. I'm going to paint these bugs in metallic colours, and I wouldn't really need to repaint it if I didn't want to. So before we start, we make sure our bench space is nice and clean. I use a brush to brush everything off. This is a potting bench as well, so it really is not kept as clean as it could be, but it's just used all the time, so it just gets messy. Now I use these cutting trays to make the pots on. You can buy them really cheap at any cheap store. And another thing that you might want to use too if you're making bigger pots is something to make the cement stronger, the concrete stronger. Wire mesh, or even this I can't remember what it's called, gutter mesh, for pots that aren't too big. The bigger the pot, the stronger the wire mesh needs to be to make the cement stronger so it doesn't crack. Okay, so now I've got my pot full of sand, and I've tamped it down nice and hard and evened it off. Remember that there are many ways of making pots. This is just one of them. This is the one I use most often. So now that I've got that sitting there, I'm going to make up my cement. We're going to make the pot in 3 layers. The first layer is just to set the sand so it doesn't fall apart. So we'll just put that to the side. We've got a bucket here. Now for the first layer, we're just going to do sand and cement. If you look on YouTube and find videos of people making pots with cement, you'll find that they use their pots just with sand and cement. You should never do that. You end up with pots that aren't very strong. But this first layer does need to be just sand and cement. This is what happens when you just use sand and cement. This is a pot that I was making the other day to show you, and it still fell apart because I handled it roughly. That can go in the bin. So I'm going to use 2 cups of sand, and 1 cup of cement for this first layer. Get my stirrer and stir it up. Add enough water to make this into a very liquid mix, because we're going to pour it. I'm not sure if you can see, but this is how liquid it is. So now that that is mixed, we'll bring back our pot and sometimes using a plant pot with holes in the bottom, the sand sticks a bit. come on. Of course, since I'm filming this, it's not going to come out. Right, there we are. There we are. Put that aside. Now if there's any cracks, you need to just gently squeeze them together. That one's fine. So we now get our cement mix. Put your cement mixer in the pot of water, because you don't want cement to be, you need to keep your tools clean. You don't want cement drying on them. And what we're going to do now is pour this cement gently over the sand. Doesn't matter if it pools at the bottom and it's not covering it. Right. So now we get our little tool here, and we're going to gently lift the cement up over the pot or over the mould. Now you just keep doing this until all the cement is used up. Doesn't have to be exactly right. You want to follow the mould, but it doesn't have to be exactly smooth. Whoops, accidentally touched that and made come off the sand. We'll just fix that up there. Now I'm not a cementer, so maybe people will complain about my technique while making this pot, but as long as it works, just keep, you'll find that you'll use up all that cement. This is just keeping the sand from falling apart. It's just sealing it, basically. Don't push on it. Just run it up the sides.
Are you talking to yourself?
I'm talking to my camera. I'm making a video on how to make pots. Don't worry, I'll edit this bit out. Now if you're making pots any bigger than this, you need to support your cement with either the wire or that plastic netting that I showed you.
Are you talking to me or to
I'm talking to the camera, Dad.
Oh.
Right, now that's done, we clean our tool, and now we leave this to set for an hour. We don't want it to be set properly, not just so it's not wet, but it still needs to be how do I explain that? Just leave it for an hour and we'll come back in an hour. Okay, so it hasn't been an hour yet, but I needed to start doing this before this leftover cement dried in the bucket. So now we're going to do the next layer. Before we do the next layer, if this was a bigger pot, this would be the time when you would surround it with wire or netting to secure the cement. It doesn't have to be exactly sitting on this. The cement will go through it and it will end up being solid. Anyway, so what we're going to do now is put another two cups of sand in our bucket. One cup of cement. And 1 cup of gravel. So we're going to mix this up. Mix it up thoroughly with the leftover cement from earlier, if you've got any leftover cement from earlier. And pour in some water, just a bit at a time. You don't want to make this one too wet. Before you pour in the water is when you would pour in the oxide if you're going to colour the cement. Now at this stage, if you were going to use your hands, and touch the cement, then you would put on gloves because it's not good for your skin. It's very alkaline. Okay, it's an hour later, time for a bit of a touch up with a wet brush and me knife. First of all, we get rid of some of the excess bits that are hanging off. And touch up some little edges. I have to admit that making pots is really more of a hobby than a business, making them like this, because they take a long time to make, considering the work that goes into them and the drying times, and that you're looking at 3 days per pot, and it really doesn't pay for itself if you're looking for it as a business. But being handmade, you can of course charge more for them, and people will pay for pots that are different, unique, that they can't get anywhere else.